Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video, I would like to discuss about the web, how the web internally works, and how can we build web applications, and how are the web applications are different from what the desktop applications that we install on our computers. So to understand that, we first need to understand how computers talk to each other. So computers, when they're invented, the main purpose of the machine is to just do some sort of computation. But later in the 1960s, so everyone wanted to sort of share a data from one system to another system. Okay, to sort of achieve that functionality, they have invented a model called a TCP/IP, and later they have standardized it using another model called OSI. So we use the standard OSI model to actually understand how it works. So this OSI model, it divides the entire functioning into seven layers. So the first layer is the application layer. So application layer is actually the layer which the user interacts with, and it is responsible for providing the application level interfaces to the user or to any other machine. And then we have the presentation layer. So the presentation layer is actually concerned with how the data is being presented, the type compatibility of the data, and if any sort of encryption is needed, or if the decryption is needed, or if you were to zip the data, all of the presentation issues of the data will be managed here. And then we have the session. So the session layer, it actually kind of develops a session between the two systems, not between the two applications. So using this session, so the applications which are running on the seventh layer here, so they are managed. So usually in the a TCP IP layer, so all these three functionalities are combined, and they are called as the application layer. So all of this will be managed by the applications which are running. And then we have the transport layer. So transport layer is responsible for maintaining a connection between the system. The connection can be established using the port number, because in a system there might be a multiple process running, but to identify the exact process through which the communication link has to be applied, so we use the transport layer. And then the network layer, it is actually concerned with how the data is to be transferred over the network. Okay, so it is not so from this layer we only deal with the machines. We don't actually deal with the computers. So we deal with routers, we deal with hubs and switches. And then we have the data link layer and physical layer. So these two layers are actually concerned with the lower level configuration of the systems to process, store, and uh, forward the data. So in this way, a data which is generally produced by user will go through all these steps, and it will be uh, passing through a network link, and all these seven steps will be repeated in the reverse order to sort of exchange the data. So this is how our two systems work. So then, then what is work? So if we were to call this thing, so we can call this as an internet, because it is actually a network of multiple systems. Of that network, two systems would like to communicate, and they're able to communicate. So we can call this as a network or an internet. So we have achieved internet, but we are yet to introduce what the web actually is. So here I can see that web is actually a subset of internet. Okay, okay, how is it a subset? See, what is internet? So internet can be defined as the infrastructure, hardware, or the network. So uh, the internet is responsible for the it. So it is only responsible for the delivery of the data. It is responsible for establishing the communication link, and it is also monitoring whatever the activities that are happening in the communication. But a web is actually a software that sits on top of the internet. So using internet we can do a lot of things, but using web we restrict ourselves. Actually, we don't restrict ourselves, but we only focus on the most important thing, right? So web enables us to access something known as a website. So we can access a website using a browser. So everything that we do with the protocol HTTP on on a on a on a software called browser. So if we were to look at only the things which are concerned with a browser and this hypertext protocol, we can define that as a web. So what are there in the web? So we have a lot of websites, and the websites will have web pages. So our web pages will be designed with a lot of technologies. So everything concerning with this is just web. So is there anything other than web that which is available in the internet? Yes, we can share files using the FTP, and there are many other protocols. You can either remote login to a system using the SSH. So there are many other protocols. So here we only deal with HTTP, or maybe the HTTPS, and maybe some other protocols which are web enabled. So web is actually a system that works on the internet, right? So I think we understood web. So in a web, so in any web application, so as we established what the web is, so any application which is running on the web, so we call it as a web application. So what a web application has, and how can I build a web application? So a web application primarily has two things, or it can be divided into three things. So it primarily has something called as a front end and a back end. So front end is what is visible to the user or the client, and the back end is actually where the entire processing happens. But even further, we can split this backend into two things, where we have the uh, backend controlling system and then the database. So a database is actually called as the backend, but I see that as a different component, because we need an entirely different team to kind of manage the databases. So this is how it works. So we have a server, we have a database, and then we have a client. So this is how basically a web systems work. Moving further, okay. So what happens when we try to access something called as website? So how can we access website? So we can access the website using the IP address. So, but we cannot remember the IP addresses, right? So we use something called as a DNS service. So using that, we can get the exact IP address of some sort of a website, a URL that we type in. And okay, let's see the processing. So the user will open the browser, and he's expected to see this website. So to access that website, let's say a facebook.com, he has to enter a URL called, www.facebook.com. So when I click enter, so the request will be sent to my DNS server. It is going to resolve that name into an IP address, and it is going to uh, allocate that. Okay, it is going to return me the address of the server. So I'm gonna send the same request to the server, and the server will process my request, and it will give me a response. And that response is nothing but a website. So I got a website. So I have my FB login page. So my FB login page is a website, but how am I able to view that website? How is it so beautiful, and how is it so colorful, and it's interactive? How did we achieve this? Because if we are using something called as a console based applications, or the desktop based applications, so we don't usually see this sort of thing, right? So what a website internally has, how it works. So usually a web server will return you some sort of pages. So it will return you some sort of content in the form of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we'll see what they are. So the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, so they work together, and they work together. So when they are placed together, we can retrieve this sort of page, which is very colorful, and it has so much interactivity. So it has a structure. So we can see that this item is placed here, it's placed here, and there is some sort of text. So we have something called as a structure in the web page, and we have some sort of coloring. So we have some sort of styles applied to it, and and when I try to click on something, it might navigate to some other place. So I have some sort of functionality. So I have a structure, I have the styles, and I have functionality. So how are they embedded into this website? How can I code that? Okay, so this is the class. So this is how the web page works. It has something called as HTML, that is that is used to define the structure, and it has a CSS. So it is used to style the websites which are defined on the structure, and there is something called as JavaScript, which is going to define the functionality. So all of these work together along with some other different technologies. So there are many libraries of CSS and JavaScript which help us to create it much faster. But this is how it is basically defined. How we are supposed to create a website. So let's look how each one of them work. So this is how a basic HTML look like. So all these things are called tags. So we've seen a lot of examples on these tags. So whatever the text content that we write inside these tags is going to be displayed on our website. So all these tags, so they don't have any style, but they're only used to identify, where did I place this hello world thing. I placed it in this paragraph tag, which is in turn in this uh, body tag, which there is some hierarchy we can see. But why do we have such sort of hierarchy? Is it needed? Why can I use a simple uh, text-based formatting for this? Why do I need something called as a hypertext markup language? So it is needed for actually defining the structure in a more semantic way. So usually using a text document, we cannot define the structure. We can only define the content of the page. So if you were to define the structure, so you have to place like you have to create a header, a navbar, an aside thing, an article, a main, a footer. So this is how a professionally crafted a website looks like. So to create such a website, so there are already some sort of predefined tags which are going to provide you that functionality. So instead of you defining everything on your own, you defining your spaces and are you defining your font size, you can use the predefined styling which is present in the the a predefined a structuring which is present in the HTML, which is a standard. And we can also achieve it using the non-semantic HTML using a few tags called as div and span. But it's always good to use the semantic styling of it. So as we discussed that we have, we can see a hierarchy, and so we didn't understand. I mean, why do we need a hierarchy even if it is a website which has some predefined tags? See, the predefined tags are actually presented in a way such that we can create something called as a document object model. So what is this document object model? So as the HTML is just a markup language, so if we were to do anything on the page, so if we want our page to be dynamic, so we have to make changes to the UI. So how can I make changes to the UI? I have to access the elements first, and let's see if I can update them. Okay, first I need to access them. Okay, then how can I access them? To access anything, I need to have some sort of reference to it. So as in the Java, we understood that if we want to manipulate anything, we are going to create classes and we are going to create objects of it, right? So can I sort of do the same sort of a structure here? In fact, we can. So here in this case, you can understand it in a way that whatever you define in the HTML, it can be seen as a class. See, a class will have this HTML element, it will have the head element, so you can see all of them as classes. Then what are the objects? The objects are what you're defining in your code. If you write okay, let's say here, so you write so here we have a HTML tag, and inside that we have a head tag, and inside the head we have a title tag, and then we have a text content called as the jQuery tutorial. Okay, so here this is the actual content. So can I call this as the object? No. The entire document that you have, it can be seen as an object. So this entire document is an object. So if it is an object which is as so it is actually how the it is how the browser processes it internally. So if the browser sees this as an object, so using some sort of a browser APIs, will I be able to access this title? And if I can modify the title, then I can achieve the uh, dynamic mechanism, right? So is it possible? Yes, it is made possible using this concept called as DOM, which is the document object model. So the a browser is going to see every HTML document as an object. So if it is an object, we can make manipulations of it. We can do a lot of things using the object. So this is how the browser looks at a HTML page. And then we have something called as CSS. So CSS is actually a broader topic when it comes to designing. So for the basic understanding, so as we have defined that the JavaScript and the browser looks at a HTML document as an object, CSS sees it in a different way. It actually sees them as every element can be seen as a selector, and every element will have a property and its value. So every element can be given a property, can be taken out a property, can be given a different sort of styles. So this is how a CSS works. So it's basically the same syntax. Whatever the properties are going to be different for different elements, and the property values are going to be different. But this is the most basic structure of CSS, and it can be expanded. So, and now let's go to JavaScript. So as we defined that JavaScript is going to see our document as an object. Okay, so let's see an example how it actually looks at it. So here I have defined something called as a script tag. So inside the script tag I can write my JavaScript code. So here I have defined a function hello, and when it is called, I'm using this document object, and I'm using the write method. So it is going to write something onto my document. It is going to remove everything which existed before. So okay, so this is the functionality we have defined. So there is one other important thing that is also managed by the JavaScript, which is called as events. So if we were to click on a so if you are clicking something on screen, then the clicking is nothing but a user event, right? So can we handle the event? So can we observe the event? Yes, it can be observed. So there is a lot of mechanism inside the JavaScript which is used to handle that. So we can just simply say on load, you just call this function called as hello. Okay, on load I'm going to call the function hello, and it is going to write something onto the screen. So I have achieved some sort of a functionality on a static page. So this is how we can use JavaScript. Fine. And okay, so as we have discussed here, that in the first page, that some sort of data will be transmitted over the network, and it will be received to the client. But you know what is the format, so in a what format we can view the data? So is it just a plain text? No, a plain text is actually a good way of transmitting over the data, because it's a character stream. But usually it's not the most readable thing, and we cannot do a lot of things with that. So in the web programming, we're going to use two major formats. So one of them is called as XML. XML is more a strict version of HTML. It is we can see HTML as a subset of XML. In XML we can define our own tags. There is no restriction on so so we don't have any sort of a predefined tags in XML. So in XML we can use the DTD specification to define, you know, how the tags are supposed to be, and there is also something called as XSD, which is used recently. So using these two ways we can define the XML formatting, and once defined, the we can read and transfer the XML com. But XML is actually a very older system. In recently we don't use that as much, because it has some sort of limitations, and all those limitations can be overcome if we use something called as JSON. So JSON is the most widely used data exchange format. See, and the most important reason is it is very much compatible with every other language, and it's very readable, and is very extensive as well. So it's nothing but if you know the uh, JavaScript objects. It's a very much a similar with some sort of rules applied. So we can define a key and a value which is our object. Which in turn together can be called as a single entry inside our object. So a set of entries we can call this as a an object. So in this way we can exchange between the two systems. So if we use the JSON, so JSON has a lot of libraries and APIs. So it's very accessible, and it's very easy to analyze the response from the APIs, right? We are going to get the response from the APIs, but in real time it is often the case that the responses are not so quick. We had to wait for a long time to actually receive the data from the server of the API. So is there a way where I can make it quick, or is there a way that I can use that a mean time to do something else? So we can employ a strategy called as asynchronous transfer. So what asynchronous transfer is and how can it be achieved, right? So the traditional web application HTTP request is gonna we're gonna throw in a request, and then we're gonna get a response, and we are not sure how much time it is going to take to actually give you a response. So in this meantime, a client, a program has to sit idle, but it's not a great way of you know programming a web. So we can use something called as Ajax. So Ajax is nothing but